Undeclared wars are commonplace. Tragically, our government engages in preemptive war, otherwise known as aggression, with no complaints from the American people. Sadly, we have become accustomed to living with the illegitimate use of force by government. To develop a truly free society, the issue of initiating force must be understood and rejected.
What if sometimes, to love your country, you had to alter or abolish the government? What if Jefferson was right? What if that government is best which governs least? What if it is dangerous to be right when the government is wrong? What if it is better to perish fighting for freedom than to live as a slave? What if freedom's greatest hour of danger is now?
Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Thursday, March 5th, 2026. Our guest is Colonel Jacques Baud. Colonel Baud, always a pleasure. Welcome back to the show. You are, of course, the most famous sanctioned person in the world. The EU has denied you your use of your bank accounts and your credit cards and your ability to travel, all because of what you said when you quoted then President Zelensky's former top aide as saying our ticket to join NATO will be a big war with Russia. A truthful and accurate statement and prediction, a truthful recitation of history, but one that, of course, goes against the grain of the European overlords. So with that background, before we get into the Iranian war, how are you, where are you, and can you move about?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you for your interest in my case. Well, I'm still in Brussels. That's where I live. I'm still not allowed to travel. That means I'm not allowed to travel back to my country. I'm still prisoner, so to say, in Belgium. My bank accounts are still blocked. In Belgium, my lawyers have requested a so-called humanitarian exemption because I have absolutely no means to buy anything, so food or whatever. And for that reason, my lawyers asked for this so-called humanitarian exemption. 1 month ago, that was early February, the Belgian Minister of Finance has granted me this exemption to pay for my essential needs, but the bank ING, the Belgium branch of ING, has not yet implemented that after 1 month. So I'm still without any resources. In fact, I'm fed, and people come to my home and bring me food and thing to live, because I have no way to buy anything, since you need to have a bank card to buy a gas, for instance, for the car. So I can't even buy gas for my car and things like that. So I'm free to travel within Belgium. And each time I go out of my home, by the way, I'm greeted by people. It's fantastic to see that, by the way. A lot of people are wanting to help and have offered spontaneously to help me, and that's extremely comforting. But the fact remains that I'm still under sanction. We are now in the process of finalizing an appeal file, and this will be handed over to the European Court of Justice next week, and we'll see from where it goes. But it's interesting to see that there is not a single accusation that is in fact that is sound. I mean, there are things, some accusations are very similar to what you had in the Prague process in 1948, because I know someone who said something, then it's almost as if I had said this myself. So this kind of thing. So this is absolutely Soviet-like accusation. I cannot say.
I mean, this is a totalitarianism in the extreme. Needless to say, I wish you well. My team wishes you well, and I think I speak for my many viewers who wish you well. I hope the next time we speak, you're free. I hope you're in Switzerland or in some place where these crazies in the EU don't reach you. What is your opinion of this war in Iran? Did Iran pose a threat to the United States of America, or is this Netanyahu's war and Trump is fighting it with him?
Well, the first question is whether or not Iran is a threat to the US. I would say no. Despite all the claims that Iran is supporting terrorism and things like this, we cannot demonstrate that. The idea of Iran supporting terrorism is based on the support to the Hezbollah, which in my view is not a terrorist organization. It's not an organization that has performed terrorist attack against Israel, for instance. It's a resistance organization, was created to resist the Israeli invasion after 1982. In fact, the Hezbollah was created in 1985, to be precise. In any case, I don't, and even after the 9/11, Iran has been instrumental in helping the US in fighting against jihadi terrorists and things like this. So, and in fact, it was recognized. And in particular, General Soleimani, who was killed by Donald Trump in 2021, if I'm not wrong. He had been one of the one who supported the U.S. in fighting Sunni terrorism. So, and beyond this, we know from the U.S. intelligence, and we know that since 2003, that Iran has no nuclear weapon program. In the early 2000s, Iran had the idea of having a nuclear bomb. They made a feasibility study. That was a project Ahmad. And in 2003, the leadership in Iran decided that the idea of having a nuclear weapon would be a political problem rather than a military one. And they decided to abandon the idea. And that was confirmed in a national intelligence estimate of the CIA in 2007. And this assessment was repeated last year in the office of the Director of National Intelligence, Mrs. Tulsi Gabbard. She confirmed and repeated exactly the same wording, in fact, last year. So we know that Iran has no nuclear weapon program, although we hear that constantly.
Let me just interrupt you for a minute, if I might. Yesterday, President Trump said Iran was, it sounds like Netanyahu, 2 weeks away from having a nuclear weapon. Is there any evidence of which you're aware to substantiate that claim?
No, there is absolutely no evidence for that. In fact, even the Israeli intelligence knows that the Iranians have no nuclear weapon. But this has been a constant claim of the Israeli government, Benjamin Netanyahu in particular. You may remember his drawing at the UN General Assembly that was in 2012 or something like that. I may be wrong on the date, but you may remember this when he came with a kind of a graph with a bomb, and he was explaining that the Iran was very close to have the capability of producing a nuclear bomb. This was all that was all fake, and since then we know, because there are also the inspection of the International Atomic Energy Agency, and they know that there is no issue with the bomb. There is the issue, of course, of enriched material, nuclear material, which is in fact also the result of the U.S. leaving the JCPOA, because the Iran used to have a production of highly enriched material, which was used to be sold abroad. It was for commercial use. And with the JCPOA, the idea was that if there was a compliance from Iran with the lifting of the sanctions, then Iran could sell this highly enriched nuclear material and uranium on the open market. And in fact, since the US left the JCPOA, the European partners of the JCPOA didn't dare to lift the sanctions because they were afraid of the possible reaction of Donald Trump at that time, and therefore they kept the sanctions, although Iran had met all the conditions to have the sanction lifted. In any case, the problem is when you enrich uranium, you cannot stop the process, meaning that when you start enriching something, you're obliged to go all through the whole process. And that's the reason why Iran could not go on the open market to sell its uranium, and it had to keep it. And that's the reason why they had huge stock of highly enriched material. But it's not military grade enriched uranium. It cannot be used for military or nuclear bomb. So it's not, Iran, I think, they have understood that the problem of having a nuclear bomb, especially in the context of the Middle East, would be a higher problem than not having one. And in addition to that, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei had issued a fatwa, that means a decision or decree, if you prefer, forbidding or prohibiting the production of nuclear weapons in Iran. And that's very ironic because Ali Khamenei was killed last Saturday, meaning that we don't know who will be his successor, and his successor may decide otherwise, and in fact come back with this idea of how to say that, to allow the construction of nuclear bomb.
You referred to Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the chart you're talking about, which you say
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So Netanyahu has come permanently with the same allegation, and there's absolutely no proof whatsoever. In 2000, that was in 2010 or something like that, they had the Israeli intelligence got some archives of the Iranian, this Iranian Ahmad project. And this was in a kind of a theatrical presentation. Benjamin Netanyahu presented all the CD-ROMs of this project, and he alleged that was the proof that Iran was working on a nuclear bomb. But in reality, all the documents that were on this trove of document, in fact, all these documents were old documents. It was obsolete documents that were produced before Iran decided to renounce to the nuclear bomb. So it was also kind of fake news, if I may, from the Israeli government at that time. So no, Iran is not a threat in that sense. Iran is a very old country with a very old civilization. It has not attacked its neighbors since 1789, if I'm not wrong. That means since the 18th century. And we don't exactly understand why Iran would be a threat to its neighbors, because it has never stated that it wanted to expand itself. There is no history of that in Iran. Uh, so they have enough problem inside the country.
You know, every allegation that the Americans and their allies have made about Iran, all of which you have just refuted, are relevant to Israel. Israel is the one that is seeking hegemony. This is part of the greater Israel project that the United States is bombing Iran. Israel wants Iran to be dismembered or utterly, totally under its control, sort of like what they did to Syria.
Well, that was a constant policy of Israel since very long, in fact, because they always seek, of course, Israel is surrounded by very large countries. I mean, you name Syria, Iraq, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and all these countries, which could be seen from Israeli point of view as a threat. And therefore, they had, and this was a plan that has been designed in the mid-80s that was taken over by the Israeli government in the 90s with Benjamin Netanyahu, and which is the Yinon plan. And this plan asked for in fact, the dismembering of all these large countries. The idea being that in all these countries, and Syria is a case in point, where you have tribes or ethnic groups that are antagonists to each other, and the idea is to exacerbate the domestic conflict in these countries so that they don't have enough resources to attack Israel. That's the basic idea, and the whole Israeli security policy was based on that. How you destabilize your
what you are telling us from your career as an intelligence official in the Swiss military. Is this generally understood by your colleagues in the CIA?
Well, I think they know that because everybody knows that the Yinon plan is everybody knows it. It had been also partly developed in the U.S. And it has, when we see today, for instance, again, if we look at Syria, we say that this is exactly what the Yinon plan asked for, or exactly in that scheme. And if you look at Iran, for instance, Iran has no territorial claim towards Israel. There is no real. If you look at objective issues between the two countries, you will find none. And as a matter of fact, the relationships between Iran and Israel have been very good up to the early 2000s. And then it changed. After the fall of Iraq, it started to change. But this idea of splitting all these big countries to destabilize them is, and in fact, it makes some sense from a strategic point of view. I'm not saying this is something that is advisable. I mean, Switzerland is exactly in the same situation as Israel. It's also surrounded by great powers. I mean, today they are peaceful, but decades ago they were not. But the policy of Switzerland has always been to ensure its security through cooperation with its neighbors, while Israel decided that it would be a security by destabilization, if you want. This is another way of understanding the same issue. And I think everybody knows that, but nobody wants to acknowledge that probably officially. Although there have been several books written on this.
Right,
this is,
right.
Again, this is no mystery.
Let me show you a montage of Prime Minister Netanyahu's untruths, some of them stated under oath to the U.S. Congress.
The deadline for attaining this goal is getting extremely close. And Iran, by the way, is also outpacing Iraq in the development of ballistic missile systems that they hope will reach the eastern seaboard of the United States within 15 years. By next spring, at most, by next summer, at current enrichment rates, they will have finished the medium enrichment, and move on to the final stage. From there, it's only a few months, possibly a few weeks, before they get enough enriched uranium for the first bomb. The foremost sponsor of global terrorism could be weeks away from having enough enriched uranium for an entire arsenal of nuclear weapons. That would place a militant Islamic terror regime weeks away from having the fissile material for an entire arsenal of nuclear bombs.
Now, when your colleagues in the CIA and your friends in MI6 see that, don't they scratch their heads and say, well, we all know this is not true?
Well, you should ask them. You should ask them.
Well, they won't come on the show. their former colleagues come on the show and tell me that.
I
don't
don't
get
know.
fired.
I don't know how they manage to accommodate the reality with the assertions and allegations we have. The reality is that, again, as I said, Iran is not a threat to the West. On the contrary, I would say that in the Middle East, the Iranians are extremely pro-West, and in fact, they have tried many times to get closer to the West. But since 1978 and the Islamic Revolution, and especially also the occupation of the U.S. Embassy, this is something that the U.S. couldn't swallow, and they haven't swallowed that yet. And that explains also this kind of obsession that you have in the U.S. towards Iran. It's very similar to the obsession you find in Eastern Europe towards Russia. It's very similar. This is something which is more based on emotion rather than facts. Although in the small video that you've shown, there is one element we have to mention. There are the ballistic missiles. Ballistic missiles, and these need to be also understood as not related to the nuclear bomb. Nuclear bomb is one thing. Ballistic missiles another thing, and that's exactly what we see falling on Israel those days and on the US bases in the Middle East. And these missiles are in fact a part of the dissuasion arsenal of Iran. And that's the reason why in February, a few weeks ago, as you had the discussions in Geneva, a senator, it's no longer senator, but Secretary of State Marco Rubio stated that the US requested from Iran that they should give up all these missiles, and the Iranians flatly refuse, and for simple reason. This is their only way of having some kind of dissuasion or deterrence against external attack. And they know since the late 70s or early 80s that the US wants to have some kind of action against Iran. And that's exactly what we have seen last year and what we see now. And the same for Israel. As a result, these ballistic missiles with conventional warhead or even hypersonic missiles, also with conventional warheads, are part of the deterrence arsenal of Iran. And I'm sure they will not give that up, because this is some kind of life insurance for them.
How long do you think this will go on before the Americans realize that they can't conquer Iran, or before the opposite to that happens? How do you see this playing out?
Well, the problem is that I don't see exactly what the US wants to achieve there. If you want to achieve kind of a regime change simply by bombing people, I'm not sure it helps a lot. There are some rumors, I mean, more than rumors actually, that the US wants to use the Kurds to create unrest in the north of the country. And I'm not sure this will be sufficient to create the conditions for regime change. As a result, we don't know exactly what the US wants to achieve without having boots on the ground. And when I say boots on the ground, it's not just a couple of US special forces, but it's quite a huge armored force, literally, that can hold the ground and can keep territory, that can occupy areas and things like this. And I'm not sure the US the US population and probably even the Congress is ready for that at this stage. As a result, this idea of toppling the regime just with a couple of strikes seems to me extremely difficult to achieve. And the problem after that is how long and how the US wants to get out of the conflict. The exit strategy, because that's the weakest point of the US since all the wars we have seen in the last decades. The US knew how to enter a country, how to intervene, how to invade, but they didn't know how to get out of the conflict. And that's exactly what I have the feeling we have now. As a result, since Israel is not able to sustain a full-fledged war on its own, it needs the US, but the US, in my perception at least, has only limited ability to sustain a full-fledged war against Iran up to the point that you achieve a regime change. So that means that the whole issue or the whole operation will have to be interrupted at one point. And this interruption may well sound like a defeat for the US. So I don't know exactly how this will evolve unless you have an escalation and we go into something that nobody wants to see in the Middle East again.
Colonel Jacques Baud, thank you very much, my dear friend. The best wishes to you in your efforts to achieve a just result via due process. And thank you very much for joining us. I hope you'll come back and join us again.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you.
And please say hello to all of our mutual friends who I know wish you well and are doing what they can to help you. All the best, Colonel.
I will. Thank you. All the best for you too. Thanks.
Thank you. Wow, what a great man and what a brilliant analysis from a career in the Swiss military intelligence. Coming up at 1 o'clock, Harrison Berger on You Can't Beat This. This is hard to believe. The instruments that were used to spy on Donald Trump before he was president, which he vowed to crush, he now wants to make permanent. That's at 1 o'clock. At 2 o'clock, Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson. At 3 o'clock, on all of this, including the misery that has been inflicted in Israel. Who else? Max Blumenthal, Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.